Last month, I started rewatching movies related to The Wizard of Oz in order to prep for Wicked, which comes out in November. Last month, I revisited the original classic, and now this month, I've chosen to rewatch The Wiz. So, let's review. So, The Wiz is essentially an adaptation of The Wiz Broadway play, which is also essentially a remake or retelling of The Wizard of Oz, however you want to tell it. But personally, the best way I can describe The Wiz is it's basically the black version of The Wizard of Oz. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but that is essentially what this movie is. Though it does keep its fantastical elements, the music is more soulful, I must say. You got Diana Ross playing Dorothy, Michael Jackson playing the Scarecrow, Nipsey Russell playing the Tin Man, and Ted Ross playing the Lion. Now, as far as my personal history with The Wiz, I've always seen this movie. In fact, I remember very vividly my first time ever seeing this movie was when my parents bought my oldest sister a VHS copy of The Wiz for Christmas one year, and then one Sunday night we all sat around, put it in, and watched it. And as far as I recall, this is my first exposure to anything to The Wizard of Oz back when I was a child. Because every time the original Wizard of Oz came on TV back in the day, it was a special event. I didn't see it that much growing up. And so this was all I had. And it is a movie that I've grown to love and appreciate. I mean, obviously I like it enough to buy it on Blu-ray. But watching with adult eyes, I still like and appreciate this movie, but I do think this movie is a bit bloated at times. And what I mean by that is particularly with all the music. And I'm not saying all the music is bad. I mean, the standout tracks to me are Get On Down the Road, which is basically a remake of Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Can You Feel the Brand New Day? I like that song. And the final song, which was sung in the finale of the movie by Diana Ross. But what I mean by bloated is that there's just so much songs and music within this movie that it just kind of dragged the story out, and it kind of got to the point where I'm just like, alright, can we get a fucking move on, please? Especially during the latter half of this movie. That being said, I love this movie for all of the blackness within it. And again, I don't mean that in a bad way, but I just like all the metaphors within this film. But particularly Dorothy within this movie, because in the original film, Dorothy wanted to leave home, whereas within this movie, it's the complete reverse of that, in which Dorothy, she doesn't want to leave home. She's a bit timid, she's a bit shy, she doesn't want to get out of her comfort zone, and this movie's Auntie M, she wants her to branch out and see the world and not be afraid. But Diana Ross's Dorothy, she is just too timid and scared, and that's one thing I like about Diana Ross, because one criticism that was made about this movie back in the day is that Diana Ross was too old. In fact, when they made this movie, I believe she was 33, but either way, she aged out of the role. But that's the thing, this version of Dorothy is not meant to be a young girl, she's just meant to be a young adult that's trying to find her place in the world and tries to find hope and see that she's capable of anything. And I thought that was a nice little take on Dorothy, and I thought Diana Ross, I think it's one of her few movie roles, she played that excellently. The other things I love about this movie is the production value. I mean, this movie is based on the play after all, and the production, the sets are all beautiful. From when they're going down the Yellow Brick Road, when Dorothy first gets to Oz, when Dorothy first crashes into the world of Oz, it's all meant to resemble Harlem, New York, or just New York in general. It's supposed to be a heightened version of New York and a little bit more fantastical, which was unique in itself. As for the other three main characters, I mean, Michael Jackson, he was also the standout in this movie, and one of the few movie roles that he did back when he was alive. And it's because of this movie Michael Jackson got to work with Quincy Jones, who is a producer on this movie, in which this movie was produced by Motown Records. And had Michael Jackson not met Quincy Jones in this movie, we would have not gotten Michael Jackson's first album, Off the Wall, which Quincy Jones produced and would later go on to produce one of the best-selling albums of all time, Thriller. And then, of course, after that, they made Bad. So just the fact that this movie led to those three fantastic albums alone are why this movie will always have a place in my heart. But Michael Jackson, he's just one of those roles where you hear that he was the Scarecrow in this movie and you're like, that makes complete sense to me. And he was dancing, moving like Michael Jackson does. And on behalf of hip-hop fans, I want to apologize for not realizing that Nipsey Hussle is a play on Nipsey Russell, who is the actor that plays the Tin Man in this movie. But the Tin Man is played by Nipsey Russell in this movie, and he had a good take on this. And then Ted Ross, who plays the Lion, I kind of like his version of the Lion than the other version of the Lion in the original version, because I'm sorry to say it, but he's not a bitch. I mean, he's still cowardly, but he's not a bitch about it. And I even like the song that he has with Diana Ross later in the movie, where she tries to encourage him and gives him courage, like basically the "You Are a Lion" song. Even going back to Scarecrow real quick, his whole thing is he wants a brain, and it's basically kind of like with the black community, how back in the day they wouldn't let us through because they didn't want us to be smart. And hey, knowledge is power, and the Scarecrow, he wanted a brain, but he had it in him all along. He just had to use his common sense, and he'd get these little newspaper quotes out of his head, and that's what gave him the knowledge. But it was also the thing that fed him negativity, and he just had to move past that. Mabel King, who plays Eveline, who is essentially the Wicked Witch of this movie, didn't leave that much of an impact on me in this movie like the other actress that left an impact in the original Wizard of Oz. And I understand that's not this movie's intent to have much emphasis on her. She was basically trying to be like some tyrant industrialist that's controlling everybody, but then of course Dorothy gets rid of her and everybody's free. But the other two performances in this movie that definitely left an impact on me is Richard Pryor, who is revealed to be Oz.
Everything they say about me is true. I'm a phony.
Woo, she my man, serious. Euphoria.
Yeah, in case y'all didn't know, that's what Kendrick Lamar put in reverse at the beginning of the song Euphoria.
Everything they say about me is true.
But Richard Pryor had a good little take on Oz, because he really was kind of a phony that kind of confined himself in his little room, and then Dorothy, she tells him, like, you can't keep yourself in here because that's not how the world works. You gotta see the world in order to grow. And that was the lesson that was definitely taken to her, which I think is more impactful than Dorothy's lesson in the original film, I must say. And then Glinda the Good Witch is played by Lena Horne, rest in peace, who is beautiful in his own right. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep comparing this to the original film, but I prefer her Good Witch over the Good Witch in the original film. There is a lot in this movie to love and admire, but it was a commercial failure back in the day. But it has since gained a following over the years, and it is within the black zeitgeist. And rightfully so, because it is definitely a unique take on the Wizard of Oz that has stood the test of time and that people do love to revisit, just for the aesthetic of the movie and the performances alone. And that's definitely the reason why The Wiz will always have a special place in my heart for being a unique take on the Wizard of Oz. But despite the fact that I do think the movie is a bit bloated with all the music and the songs, I'm still gonna give The Wiz the heart eyes emoji.